Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be one that I've been planning for a while now, or wanted to do for a while now, and it is if I could only keep one palette from every brand. So I've seen creators do this off and on for the last year or so that I've noticed, and I know my friend Nikki Raven just did this video recently, and that was my push to finally actually sit down and film it. So the rules for this are if somehow everything disappeared, I could only keep one palette from each brand that I have multiple palettes from. So I did limit this just like Nikki did. So I had to have at least 3 palettes from a brand to narrow it down. And if you know me or you've watched the channel before, you know I love eyeshadow. You know I have a lot of eyeshadow palettes. So I thought this was gonna be really hard, but it was actually surprisingly easy. For most of these, I was like, that one, that one, that one. Like I knew exactly. And then there are a couple where it was like one of these two, but this one's close enough to another that I'll pick this one, or this one would fill the gap better than that one. So I gathered up all of those palettes and let's just go through them one by one. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Colin. I'm a non-binary Latinx scientist and lover of makeup with a particular interest in indie makeup and high-end makeup. And I tend to take a pretty analytical approach to my makeup reviews and my collection as a whole, just because of who I am. And I have new content every week, so I'd love to have you subscribe. Okay, so like I said in the intro, this is the hypothetical if I could only keep one from each brand that I have multiples from, and I had to have at least 3. So there are a bunch of brands where I have like 2 palettes from, like ABH, I only have the 2 newest ones from. I had the Jackie Aina palette, but I decluttered it because it stopped working. I think it was just patchy and bad. Like it went bad really quickly. I don't know what that was. I had it like less than a year, I think. So I didn't pull any ABH, and there's lots of other brands where I have like 1 or 2 things from, but this had to be at least 3. I don't have these in any particular order. They're not alphabetized or anything. They're just in a stack in front of me as I pulled them out. And if you're interested about my makeup, I just filmed a try to get ready with me. So where I did this makeup, so that video will probably go up before this. And editing me might change my mind, but what the palette I'm wearing is in this stack, so I'll talk about it a bit there. So the first one I'll mention is actually what's on my eyes today, and it is the Pat McGrath Subliminal palette. So my 2 favorite Pat McGrath palettes are Subliminal and Midnight Sun. But part of why Midnight Sun is my favorite is because it's the most earthy, it's really special, it's like my favorite shades. But because those are my favorite shades, I have them in some of these other palettes, and I don't have shades like this in other palettes. So this is my favorite cool tone palette. It's cool toned without being ashy. So you've got this perfect taupe shade, you've got this really nice dark kind of gray brown, you've got a black, you've got a nice highlighter. These satins are really beautiful, one and done shades, and I really like all 4 special shades in this palette a lot. This is tied with Midnight Sun for my favorite Pat McGrath palette. I love this. So I actually am wearing this today. I put these 2 mattes down, this satin shade, and then I put this special shade over it. And I really love the way my makeup came out today. So this had to be included. If I could only keep one Pat McGrath palette, it would be this one. So the next palette is actually from a brand that is no longer in business. I think they still have some stock and they're selling out. I don't know when their actual final closing date is or if it's already passed. I feel like it might have already passed, but it is the Van Gogh palette from Kylove. I have 3 of their palettes, all of these little 9 pans, and this is by far my favorite. I'm really sad to see them go out of business. I think they both just had other stuff in their lives and they couldn't put the effort they wanted to into it, is what they said. And I respect that. I respect taking a step back because you know that, but we have seen a lot of brands close down in the last 6 months. And I really love this palette. I love the theme, and then the color story is just beautiful. It's such a good winter spring palette, kind of all year palette, but you've got these nice bright pops over here, and then you've got some earthy tones. Like I said, I didn't need Midnight Sun because I've got earthy tones in a lot of these. And then you've got a blue. These blue shimmers are really pretty. This Terrace shade is a really nice bronzy one and done shade for me. So this was a no-brainer. Had to have this, even though they are sadly no longer a brand. Also, I've bought most of these, but I will mention if I did get one in PR, because I do get PR from a couple places. So the next palette is going to be from Gourmand Girls. This I received in PR. I have 3 of their palettes. I have the Radioactive palette, which is all shimmers. I have the Spooked palette from Halloween that was really, really hyped and well-deserved hyped. That came out in the fall. And then I have the Ethereal palette, which is the one that I picked because it is my favorite of the 3. I really like Spooked. There's like a few particular shades that I've worn over and over and over again in there. Like 2 of the shimmers are my favorite, and then like the mattes that I like, there's like a couple mattes in there that I really love, and I've used those many times. But this one is one of their all shimmer palettes, and it's just so pretty, and it's a lot of my favorite kind of colors as shimmers, so I would want to have some of these in my collection. So you've got this beautiful ethereal like green shade here, you've got this really pretty bronze with a little bit of a flip. Radiance is a really beautiful, so it looks coral here, but it's got a really strong like teal flip. Nova is a really pretty pink blue. This is a nice blue purple. So you've got a lot of like special shades in here, which is why I had to pick this one. It's also small and compact, and the formula is nice. So this was an easy pick. Okay, so the next palette is from Viseart, and this I have 3 palettes and a few quads from them. And this was actually hard because I really love, I love all of my palettes, that's why I have them. But I really love all my Viseart palettes, and this I was torn on at first. And then when I paused and thought, I was like, nope, this is a pretty easy decision. And it's the Petite Matte's Dark. So I like a dark smoky eye. I like a colorful smoky eye. And I like to have a shade to deepen things up. And the Viseart matte formula is one of the best out there. I love them. I want more. And this is just a perfect little palette. So you've got all mattes. You can do an all matte look, or you can incorporate something like one of these. You've got a couple neutral shades up here, and you've got, again, earthy tones. You've got these like moss green and tones, this warm orange, and then you've got blue, purple tones. It's dark. You can use it by itself. You can use it to deepen another palette or another look. I just love it. It's little. I really, really want more Viseart. I really like I have 2 quads and 3 palettes, and I really want more. The quality is just amazing. So the next palette was also really easy to pick, and it is my palette from Melt. So I have, let's see, I have 7 Melt palettes. I had to think and count for a second. And I love all of them, really love Melt's formula, but the one that is like the perfect Colin palette, all of those, and the one that I just had to pick the one was Gemini. So this is the updated Gemini. I adore this palette so much. It's like one of my perfect neutral color stories for my skin tone. So you've got these like yellowy neutral mattes down here, and then you've got these olivey mattes over here. One of the best black shadows that I have. Had to pick this. I really love this palette. Rust was a close second. I really do love Rust, but this, I think this had to be the one I would pick. It's just such a perfect palette. I love the color story. I love the packaging. I love everything about this. And that should be no surprise to anybody that was the Melt palette that I picked. Okay, so the next palette is another one that we can't buy. And it is because the brand is Russian, and we can't buy from Russian brands right now until Russia stops trying to conquer other countries. And that is Sigil Inspired. So Sigil Inspired by Tammy Tunica is one of my favorite brands. They have maybe my favorite eyeshadow formula. Really top notch, really beautiful mattes, beautiful shimmers. Up there with Pat McGrath. Love everything about them. I have a lot of their palettes and a handful of their singles, but the one that I thought of for this, so I thought about picking the Gazelle, but I only have the mini Gazelle because it was all that I could get. Still sad about that. And it's not exactly perfect because some of the mattes are a little too pale for my skin tone. But the other one that I've used over and over and over again is the Toad palette. So I really love this palette. I do a video on this on my channel. I have a video for most of these things. It's beautiful. I love the packaging that they did. It's like cardboard, but feels really nice. And then beautiful color story. They are magnetic, which I appreciate. So you've got two mattes. You've got more of a red matte, but like an earthy red, and then a really nice brown with a hint of green. And then you've got a pinky highlighter shade. And then this is like a bronze to green, and this is like a gray to green, and then this is like a really dark smoky green. Just a beautiful green. I almost picked the Snake palette because it's got the most intense green shades, but this is probably my most used Sigil palette, and I love it so much. I am so sad they keep launching new stuff, as brands should, but I haven't been able to buy it because you can't pay them, and I'm so sad because they look so pretty and look like things that I would really like. But you can't have everything. I just have to remind myself it can be pretty and I can appreciate it, but I don't have to own everything. Especially when I physically can't buy it. The next one was a little hard to pick. So it is Sydney Grace. I have exactly 4 Sydney Grace palettes, and I would like to try more from the brand. I really like the formula, but it's not my absolute favorite. The mattes are consistent. Like, one of the things that I would say is great about Sydney Grace is they are consistent, and I like that about them. And I really love that they always have a dark and a light version, so the transition shades can work for your skin tone. But the shimmers tend to feel kind of, they're a little thicker and they feel a little heavy on my lids, so I don't grab them as much as I do for other things. But I have the 3 Temptalia palettes, and I have the Enduring Love palette, and I wish I had the Mel Thompson palette. I just never bought it. But I had to go with Enduring Love because other than the Pat McGrath palette, I don't really have a lot of cool tones in this stack. And this is a really nice cool tone palette. I have the deep version because these shades up here are different in the light version, and they were way too light for me. I like that you've got a nice olive, you've got these kind of purple and blue, you've got some pops of color, but you've got really good stable neutral mattes in here, which I really appreciate and really like. So this had to be in the list or in the stack. Okay, so the next palette is going to be for Haus Labs. So there are 3 Haus Labs palettes that I have. They also had a bunch of quads, but I never bought any of them. And they have, since gone to Sephora and haven't launched any palettes since then. And I really want them to. I have a feeling they're gonna be expensive though. But I love everything else that they've come out with since switching to Sephora. I mean, I liked most of the stuff they had beforehand too, but I really still like the original palette. It has a really great matte black in it. The browns in it are really good. Like, I have basically pan in one of the lighter brown. The like purpley tones were okay, but like, especially if you could get it at a discount, I think you still can get it for like $10. Totally worth it. I think it's a really great palette. It's compact, formula's nice. There's a duochrome in there that's really pretty. And I like the Stupid Love palette. It has a couple shades that are like, but like most of them are really nice. But I had to go with the Love for Sale. So this was the last one they released as an Amazon brand, and it was their first made in Italy. So this was the only one that was made in Italy versus I think the others were made in the United States. And the formula did change for this. It's a little softer. So it's definitely a very friendly palette, kind of like a Viseart where you can build up the shadow, but if you are fair skinned, you can kind of do a light layer. But it's just so pretty. It's a really nice neutral palette. This shade right here is a topper, like a really sheer topper that works best like just on a bare lid or something, or over a matte. And I know people don't generally like that type of shade, but it's got a really nice range of tones. You've got some peachy tones, you've got some cool tones, you've got a neutral brown, you've got this really nice kind of terracotta orange. This mauve tone's really nice. The shimmers are more of a standard metallic, like a soft, you could use them as a one and done kind of shade. Like not satin, but not super metallic either. They're like satin with a love sparkle. Like this one's a little more satin and this one's pretty sparkly. But they're just beautiful, easy to work with. tend to get more of a softer, really daytime friendly look, but really love this palette, and I pull it out to when I want like a quick, effortless, soft glam kind of look. So the next brand is Lethal Cosmetics. They are one of my favorite brands. Love their formula. They were like my intro to indie makeup too, and I still adore the formula. I almost picked Velvet Dusk, and if I had the new palettes, they weren't in my budget when they came out. But there's the newer one that's like olive and warm tones, might be the one I'd pick here, and I still really want it. I just haven't had the money. But I went with the Night Flower palette. I really love this palette. The reason this won over Velvet Dusk has more neutral tones and some olivey tones. I have a lot of those in these other ones, so I was trying to round things out better. And this has really beautiful blue and purples, and especially the shimmers in here are really beautiful. Just super nice to use, really beautiful. I love their matte formula. It's like soft, kind of like Nomad's, where it's a little powdery, but it builds up nicely. They blend together effortlessly, and they're just a pleasure to work with, and the shimmers are really pretty. I know people have kind of hated on their shimmers off and on for years, but I've always loved the shimmers, so. I think people expected, because they're an indie brand and they sell singles, that the shimmers would be like a Terra Moon's or a Divina shimmer, and because they weren't, they were like, ugh, I don't want it. But I don't think every shimmer needs to be a Divina shimmer, and they do have shades like that now. So I just think it's, again, a matter of taste versus quality that I've talked about in other videos. But I think the quality is great, and I love this color story, and it's always sold out, so that tells you something. Okay, so I have 6 more brands left, and you will not be surprised by any of these, I don't think, if you know me at all. So the next one is going to be Odins Eye. I have quite a few Odins Eye palettes. I started buying them at the Norns palette, and I've bought not everyone since then, but a lot of them. I really like their formula. But the one I had to pick, sadly also discontinued, but it is the Giant Wolves palette from Annette that they did with Annette's Makeup Corner. I love this palette. It is the most me color story of all of them. I really love Judy's. I really love the Christmas Eve palette that they came out with. But this is the most me color story. You've got blues, you've got some cool tone, purpley tones, greeny olivey tones, really beautiful shimmers. Like, this was a no-brainer. When I like looked at my little Odins Eye section, I was like, that one. Like, without a doubt, this is, and I did a ranking of all my Odins Eye palettes in December when I was ranking a lot of brands, and I will link that video if I remember. But spoiler alert, that was my favorite, and it's just the perfect like palette for me and my color preferences. Okay, so the next palette is going to be from Lunar Beauty. I have 3 Lunar Beauty palettes. I have Moonspell Volume 1, Moonspell Volume 2, and the Eternal Eclipse palette that I got finally in that mystery box they did last year. And I almost picked Eternal Eclipse because I really love the blues in there. I like the range of mattes. The formula is really great, but I had to do Moonspell Volume 1. It's what got me to buy from the brand in the first place, and it's still like what I compare everything else the brand does to. Packaging, 10 out of 10. Looks like a spell book, looks beautiful, it's hefty. I just love the packaging. And then the color story, I love witches. I love that he put the charmed ones in here, all 4. He's got Kiki for Kiki's Delivery Service. He's got, Winifred, Sarah, and Mary from Hocus Pocus. It's just such a good palette. The shade Hermione sucks, and I will grant that. This is not even a topper. It just does nothing. And it did the moment I got it. Just like, it had hard pan when I received it. But the greens here are beautiful. Fiona is a really beautiful, like, smoky teal. The neutrals here in the middle are really great. You can go kind of cool toned or warm toned, depending on which of these you use and which of these shimmers you pick. I've done quite a few days of using this middle row. And then I love these purples up here. Moonspell Volume 2 is nice, but it's more pink, and I don't use a lot of pink or red. And that was a palette where I like, the first time I bought like a really pinky red palette, and then I was like, there's a reason I don't use pink and red very often. But these are beautiful. The Prue shade is so pretty. It's kind of similar to what I have on my lid right now. I adore this palette, and I wish it was permanent. Okay, so 4 brands left. The next one I'm gonna do is Kaleidos. So I have 4 of the Futurism palettes, both of their big palettes, and I have the Flowerpunk palette. I don't have their quads that have come out since. And I had to go with Club Nebula. This is unsurprising. This is one of my favorite palettes in my collection, like top 5 palettes I own. Love the formula, love the color story. I really want Kaleidos to come out with more stuff like this. Like if they could do another collab with Angelica, that would be great. But even if they don't, like just more stuff like this would be perfect. Not for my wallet, but for my soul. Sadly, again, not available, but it's just so good. Okay, so next up is going to be Trixie Cosmetics. I have all of their palettes. I don't have the original small blue palette that they came out with, their very first palette, but I do have the revamped version of that. And I don't have their like Heartbreak palette, the breakup palette that was shaped like a heart. That didn't interest me, but I have literally all the other ones, and I had to give it to Planqué. I love them all, and I did rank them all. And this came up at the top of the ranking, but not number 1, I don't believe. It's kind of tied for number 1, but it had to be Planqué. The theme, the color of the packaging, the color story itself. You've got their really interesting like glitter shades that are like, they're not a glitter, but they're glittery. Totally really beautiful green. I like this quad quite a bit, but I've used them all. These pinks are actually pinks that I will use as like a pop. The pun names in this, it had to be Planqué. And this was one of the first videos I did on my channel, and still has a lot of views compared to some of the other ones. Okay, so I've got 2 palettes left, 2 brands. Next is Nomad. So I did get this palette in PR. I have most of my palettes from Nomad I've gotten in PR. And I do have a code with Nomad. It's just Bones. And it's not affiliated, so I don't earn money from it. It's just to save you money. But I had to pick the Hudson Valley. I use this a lot. I love this palette so much. It makes me miss living in the Northeast, which is where I consider home, New York. I lived in Connecticut for a while as well, but New York feels like home still. Going back recently was really nice. I really needed that. Made me realize how much I miss it and how much I need to get back. But this is just the perfect fall color story. I said this over and over again because I've talked about this palette a lot, because I talk about the same products over and over again on my channel. It's just the perfect color story. You've got the traditional fall colors, but like a little more expanded than you might obviously have. And then you've got these really beautiful green tones and these neutral tones. And you've got like the earth, the rocks, the moss on the trees. You have all of the color of fall here, not just, I feel like most fall palettes are just like that or that. And this is just more encompassing. The shimmers in this are really beautiful, but the mattes are really where it's at. I love Nomad's mattes, and I love this palette so much. I'm excited to see what they do this year, though. Really, really excited to see. I've talked to the owner a few times about like plans for the year. She hasn't told me anything specific, but she is like, we've talked about things. So I have like a general idea of what might be coming, or vibes that might be coming, and I'm very excited. And then last but not least is Natasha Denona. I have a lot of Natasha Denona palettes. I have 5 of the $100 palettes, and I have all of the midi size palettes except for Retro Glam, because it just did not look good on my skin tone. I still want it for specific shades, but not at $70. Like if I could get it for $30, I'd buy it. But I had to go with Metropolis. It's my favorite palette from Natasha Denona. I know it's a little redundant in its color story, but it's my favorite. You've got multiple cream to powder formulas in here. You've got bronzy tones, which I love. You've got some like orangey tones. You've got some green and teal. You've got a lot of olive-y tones, which is what draws me into this the most. I feel like this area right here is what I use the most. Like this shade through here, this matte, like this little weird shape over here. But I do grab for some of these other ones periodically, and I just love this palette so much, and I really wish it was permanent. I don't know why it's I mean, I know why things get discontinued. I just wish it wasn't. And I really wish she would I wish she would do another palette like this. And I think she should start making her big palette smaller. Like, I think Circo Loco should have been a midi palette. I think, you know, Triochrome could have been a midi. I feel like she needs to focus more on the midis, just because $130 is a lot for a palette, especially. Okay, so that is all of them. Let me know in the comments below what you think of my picks. What would you pick? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching, as always, and remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you in my next video.